The rules said you had to answer when your name was called. I don't remember who came up with that rule. Maybe no one did. Maybe we all just agreed because it made sense. If you didn't answer, the game wouldn't end. I grew up on a dead-end street. Houses lined only one side. The other side was an open stretch of land. Not exactly a forest. Just uneven ground, tall grass, and scattered trees that grew thicker the farther you went in. At night, the streetlights didn't reach past the first few steps. We played there almost every day. After school, before dinner. Sometimes later if no one called us back inside. Hide and seek was the only game that really worked in a place like that. It felt bigger than it actually was. Quieter too. There were 5 of us. Me, Rian, the oldest, Cinta, who lived next door, Bimo, whose backyard opened straight into the empty land, and his younger brother, Aldi. That night, it was still hot even after the sun went down. The ground held the heat. The air didn't move much. We said we'd do one last round before going home. Rian was at first. He stood facing the back wall of Bimo's house, eyes closed, counting out loud. 1, 2, 3, we ran. I didn't go very far. I don't know why. I just didn't feel like going deep that night. I stayed near the edge, behind a stack of old wooden boards half covered in grass. From there, I could still see the faint glow from Bimo's kitchen window. Rian's voice carried through dark. 27, 28. Then it stopped. Silence settled in. The insects sounded louder when everything else disappeared. I stayed still. After a few seconds, I heard footsteps. Slow, dragging slightly across dry leaves. I assumed it was Rian. The steps came closer. Not rushed, not searching. More like someone walking toward a place they already knew. I lowered my head. The steps stopped. Very close. Close enough that I could hear breathing. Or maybe just air moving. It was hard to tell. I waited for him to say something. To call my name. Nothing. A few seconds passed. Then the footsteps moved again. Away from me. Deeper into the dark. I frowned. Rian never went that far in the beginning. He always checked near the edge first. I stayed hidden a little longer. Then I stood and walked back. When I reached the yard, Cinta and Bimo were already there. Rian stood near the back door. I got them, he said. I looked at him. You went in already? He shook his head. Not yet. I didn't answer right away. I just nodded. A moment later, Aldi came running out from the dark, dirt on his knees, laughing. We kept playing. My turn. I took Rian's spot by the wall, closed my eyes, started counting. 1, 2, 3. I could hear them scatter, leaves shifting, feet hitting uneven ground. Then quiet again. I finished counting. 50. I turned around. The yard was empty. I checked the obvious spots first. Behind the motorbike, near the small storage shed, under the window. I found Bimo. Then Cinta. They laughed and ran back. 2 left, Rian and Aldi. I stepped into the open land. The ground felt cooler there. I turned on my phone flashlight. The beam was narrow. It barely reached past a few meters. I can see you, I said quietly. No answer. I walked deeper. Then I spotted Aldi crouched near a small tree. Got you. He stood up and ran, laughing. 1 left. I kept walking. The air felt different, quieter. Even the insects seemed to stop in that part. I slowed down. Then I heard footsteps again. Ahead of me, slow, heavy. I lifted the light. It hit tree trunks, grass, nothing else. The footsteps stopped. So did I. A few seconds passed. Then, from behind me, Rian's voice. Done. I turned. He was already near the edge of the yard. I walked back. I thought you were inside. I said. He shook his head. I stayed near here. I didn't push it. We gathered again. Nothing looked wrong. Everything felt normal. We went for one last round. Aldi volunteered to count. He started loud. We ran again. I went back to the same spot, behind the wooden boards. Lowered myself. Stayed still. His counting echoed. 39, 40, then silence. I waited a few seconds. Then I heard something different. Not footsteps. A voice. Low. Too soft to understand. Like someone whispering just out of range. I lifted my head slightly. Nothing. The whispering stopped. I swallowed. Probably from a house nearby. Probably from the street. I tried to make it make sense. Then, Jeff. Someone called my name. Quiet. Right behind me. I didn't move. My mind immediately tried to explain it. That's Aldi. He found me. Or Rian messing around. I almost answered. That was the rule. If your name was called, you answered, but something didn't match. The voice was too close. Too flat. No pause. No breath between the sound. I stayed still. My body had already tensed before my thoughts caught up. It called my name again. Softer. Closer. Like it was right next to my ear. I stood up, not because I decided to. More because my body had already done it. I turned. No one. Just the boards. And darkness behind them. I stepped back. Then from the yard, Aldi shouted. Done. I walked out quickly. Didn't look back. My heart was beating too fast. We gathered in the yard again. Everything looked normal. Aldi complained about how hard it was to find anyone. Cinna laughed. Bimo sat on the ground, drinking. Rian leaned against the wall. I tried to explain what happened. I told them I heard someone call my name. They reacted immediately. Yeah, because Aldi was looking. Bimo said. Aldi shook his head. I didn't go there yet. I looked at Rian. He shook his head too. I stayed here. No one was smiling. I opened my mouth, closed it again, looked for another explanation. Maybe I heard it wrong. Maybe it came from far away. Maybe two sounds overlapped. I nodded slowly. Yeah, probably. We didn't go home right away. We sat for a while, like we were trying to return things to normal. Then Aldi spoke. He didn't look at anyone, just at the ground. Something called me too. Silence. I thought it was you guys, he said, but it sounded off. Bimo let out a small laugh. Don't start. But it didn't sound convincing. Rian didn't laugh. He kept looking toward the dark stretch of land. For a long time, like he was waiting for something to come out. We ended it there. No extra rounds. No argument. Like the night had already decided it was over. I went inside, closed the door, locked it. The kitchen light was still on. Everything looked normal. I went to my room, lay down, tried to sleep. I picked up my phone. That's when I noticed something. The flashlight was still on. I turned it off. The screen dimmed. Then I saw a small icon in the corner. Camera. Still running. Not the full camera app. Something else. Like a quick recording. I didn't remember turning it on. There was one video. Just under a minute. I stared at it. My thumb moved before I finished deciding not to press it. I pressed play. The video started in darkness. Slight shaking. The flashlight beam moved across the ground. Wooden boards. Dry leaves. Everything the way I remembered. I could see my own shadow stretched across the ground. Still, then, something I didn't remember. The light didn't only hit the ground. There was another shadow, right behind mine. Taller, too tall, standing still. I didn't remember anyone being behind me. In the video, that shadow moved first. Not me. Its head tilted slightly, like it was leaning closer. Then, the screen cut to black. The video ended. I didn't react right away. My mind started building explanations. Tree shadow, angle of the light, someone passing by. But my body had already moved. I turned toward my bedroom door. Closed. Silent. I played the video again. Slower this time. Watching carefully. When the shadow appeared, I noticed something smaller. Something harder to explain. The shadow didn't follow the direction of the light. When my hand moved, the beam shifted, but the shadow stayed where it was, like it wasn't attached to anything. I stopped the video. The screen went still. I didn't delete it. I didn't watch it again. A few days after that, we never played there again. We never talked about it directly, but we all knew we still played. On the street, in front yards, never past the edge, never into that place again. Now, years later, the land is gone. Houses built over it. Lights everywhere. Nothing dark left. Nothing hidden. But sometimes, when I wake up in the middle of the night and the house is too quiet, I still feel the urge to turn on a light. Not to see what's in front of me, but to make sure there's nothing behind me. That only shows up when the light is on. I stopped counting at 47 because I suddenly realized I wasn't alone in the house. I still finished counting to 50. My voice sounded normal. At least I think it did. Then I said I was coming. That night felt colder than usual for late September. Not freezing, just enough to make the floor feel different under my feet. My parents had gone out to dinner with some friends. They said they'd be home late. The house was mine. I invited my neighbor, Chris, same age. He lived right across the street. Usually we just stayed in the basement playing games or watching something, but that night got boring fast. The idea of hide and seek came up without much thought. It sounded dumb at first, but we played it before with a group and it worked better in the dark. The house wasn't big, but there were enough places to hide if most of the lights were off. We turned off almost everything. The only light left on was in the kitchen. Rules were simple. No going outside. No attic. No crawl space. Basement, bedrooms, closets, under furniture, all fair. Chris wanted to hide first. I stood in the living room, facing the wall, covering my eyes. I started counting. At first, I could hear him moving. Quick footsteps. Then nothing. I finished counting. I started with the kitchen. There wasn't really anywhere to hide there. I checked behind the basement door. Then the hallway. Bathroom was empty. The closet near the front door. Empty. I went upstairs. Every step made the floor creak softly. Small sounds felt louder than they should have. I checked my parents' room first. Under the bed. Behind the dresser. No one. Then my room. Messy, but not enough to hide in. I still checked the closet. Under the desk. Nothing. That left one room. The guest room at the end of the hall. The door was slightly open. I pushed it slowly, expecting to jump out and scare me, but nothing happened. The room was dark, quiet. I stepped inside, looked under the bed. Nothing. Opened the closet. Nothing. I figured he had to be in the basement. I went back down, checked behind the laundry machines, the storage space under the stairs. That's where I found him, curled up behind some boxes. He laughed immediately, asked how long it took me. I told him too long. We switched. Now he counted. I went upstairs again. This time, I didn't overthink it. I slid under the guest bed and pulled the bed skirt down so it covered the gap. Dark. My heartbeat felt too loud. A few minutes later, I heard him coming up the stairs. Slow steps. Heavy. He opened the bathroom door first, then my parents' room. The footsteps got closer. The hallway, then the guest room. He stopped right next to the bed. I held my breath. His shoes shifted slightly on the carpet. Then, silence. Long enough that I was sure he knew I was there and was just waiting. But he didn't move. The footsteps walked away. The door opened, closed. I stayed there for a few more minutes, waiting for him to call it, but the house stayed too quiet. I crawled out, went downstairs. He wasn't on the couch. I said the game was over. My voice echoed slightly. Then from the basement, I heard him. He said he was still looking. I frowned, thought he was messing with me. I walked to the basement door, opened it, called down. He answered from below, said he was still searching, asked where I was hiding. My stomach dropped. I told him I was out, told him I was in the kitchen. A second later, I heard him coming up. He stepped into the kitchen light. He looked confused. He asked how I got upstairs so fast. I told him I never went downstairs. I told him I'd been under the guest bed the whole time. He paused, then said he was sure he checked that room. He said he heard something inside, like breathing. I told him I didn't move at all. We argued a little, not seriously. Then we just kept playing. But something felt off. Every sound in the house felt wrong. At one point, while I was counting, I thought I heard something upstairs. A soft thud. When I checked, nothing. I found Chris in the laundry room. We kept going until we got tired. Then we sat on the couch, turned the TV back on, and that's when we both froze. The sound came from upstairs. A loud bump, like something heavy hitting the floor. We both looked toward the stairs. Chris asked if it was my parents. I shook my head. I knew they weren't home yet. We waited. The house went quiet again. Chris said maybe something fell off a shelf. I wanted that to be true. Then we heard it again. Not something falling this time. Floorboards creaking. Slow, measured, footsteps, walking down the upstairs hallway. We didn't move right away. We just looked at each other. I whispered maybe we should check. Chris shook his head immediately, then stopped. Because if someone was actually in the house, we couldn't just sit there. I stood up first, not because I had decided, more because my body was already standing before my mind finished arguing against it. I grabbed the fireplace poker, told Chris to stay behind me. We walked toward the stairs. Every step felt too loud. I could hear my own breathing. We reached the top. I pointed toward the guest room. The door was closed now. I knew I had left it slightly open. We stood there for a few seconds. Then from behind the door, a sound, slow, like something dragging across carpet. Chris whispered we should leave. I wanted to agree, but I was already too close. My hand was already moving. I grabbed the doorknob. My hand was shaking, not dramatically, just enough that it didn't feel fully under my control. I pushed the door open. The room was dark. The outline of the bed, the dresser, no one. I stepped inside. Chris stayed at the doorway. I opened the closet. Just coats and boxes. We both laughed. Not real laughter. We turned to leave. Then, another sound. Not upstairs. Downstairs. The front door. Opening. Closing. We froze. Chris whispered someone was in the house. My stomach felt hollow. We moved quickly to my room. Lights off. I held the poker tighter. We listened. At first, nothing. Then, footsteps on the first floor. Slow. Heavy. I thought about my phone. Then remembered it was on the couch. We looked for another way out. The window was too small. The only way out was past the stairs. The footsteps got closer. We heard the basement door open, then footsteps going down, one by one. We didn't say anything. We just moved. We ran, down the stairs, through the kitchen, out the back door. The cold air hit my face. We didn't stop until we reached Chris's house. His parents were home. They called the police. The officers searched my house, top to bottom. They found nothing. No forced entry. No one inside. They said it was probably just the house or our imagination. I didn't argue. Chris didn't either, because we both heard it. And there's one thing that still doesn't make sense. He said he heard someone breathing in the guest room before I came out from under the bed. And I stopped counting at 47 because I felt someone standing right behind me. A few seconds before Chris even finished running to hide. I haven't played hide and seek since that night. Not because it feels childish, but because I learned something about how easy it is to believe you know exactly who's inside your house, and how long someone can stay perfectly still. Long enough for you to think you're alone. Long enough for you to move again, before they decide to move first. He never actually stopped counting. I didn't realize that until it was already over. It was a Saturday afternoon in July. The kind of heat that sticks to your skin. I was 14, living out in the rural part of Pennsylvania. Our backyard was huge. Open grass, a few trees, and an old storage shed at the edge of the property. Me, Ryan, Josh, and Adam had been playing basketball for about an hour. Sweaty, out of breath, sitting in the grass, passing around a water bottle. That's when he showed up from the dirt road. No sound of a car, no footsteps we noticed. He was just there, standing a few yards away, older than us, maybe 16, taller, messy black hair, gray shirt, jeans. We all went quiet for a second, like our bodies noticed before our minds did. He spoke first, asked if we wanted another person, so teams would be even. His voice was calm, flat. Adam asked who he was. He said his name was Keith, said he lived just up the road. I had never seen him before. None of us had, but no one said no. Ben asked if he wanted to play basketball. Keith shook his head, said it'd be better to play manhunt, said my backyard was perfect for it. A lot of places to hide. He said it like he already knew. We agreed. No reason not to. We split into teams. Keith immediately said he'd be the seeker first. He didn't ask, didn't wait, like that was already decided. Adam and Josh stayed with him. Me, Ryan, and Ben ran to hide. Ryan went toward the tree line. Ben behind the garage. I went to the shed. The door creaked when I opened it. That smell hit right away. Gasoline, old wood. I stepped inside, closed the door slowly. Dark. I knew this place. There was a pile of folded tarps in the corner. I slid under them, held my breath. Outside, I heard Keith start counting. Not loud, but clear. 1, 2, 3. Slow, steady, nothing strange. Until I realized one small thing. He didn't stop. I waited for 10. That's when people usually stop. Start searching. But he kept going. 11, 12, 15. I waited for footsteps. None came. Just the counting. 20, 21. The voice didn't get closer. Didn't move away. Like it stayed in one place. 30, 31. I tried to remember our rules. We never counted this long. Usually just a 10. Then you go. 40, 41. I thought maybe he was joking, dragging it out, but there was no laugh, no change in tone. 50, 51. My hands were already sweating. I wasn't sure why. Nothing had happened. Nothing was wrong, but my body wasn't relaxed. 60, 61. I shifted under the tarp. The fabric scraped. I froze. The counting didn't stop. 70, 71. I slid out, slowly, moved to the door, cracked it open. Light came in. The yard looked normal. No one there. No Keith. No Adam. No Josh. Just the counting. Still going. From somewhere I couldn't place. 80, 81. It sounded like it was behind me. I turned back into the shed. Dark. Empty. The counting didn't change. 90, 91. I stepped outside. Closed the door. Looked around. Nothing moving. I started walking toward the house. Slow. Didn't want to look like I was giving up. Didn't want to stay there either. 100. He didn't stop at 100. 101. 102. I stopped walking. Tried to find where the voice was coming from. It didn't make sense. A voice shouldn't sound like that. Everywhere. Nowhere. 110. 111. I turned back toward the shed. Door still closed. No one came out. No one went in. 120. 121. I called for Ryan. No answer. Called Ben. Nothing. 130. 131. I started walking faster toward the patio. My heartbeat was climbing into my throat. Not because I had decided to panic. More like my body had already decided something before I caught up. 140. 141. I reached the patio. Empty. Water bottles still there. Basketball on the ground. No one else. 150. 151. Now it sounded like it was right behind me. I turned. Nothing. The counting kept going. A few minutes later, Adam came around the side of the house. He looked confused. Said he stopped being a hunter because Keith never stopped counting. Josh showed up after him. Ben too. Ryan last. We all said the same thing. None of us ever saw Keith start searching. We only heard him counting. No one knew where he was. We stood there, listening. The counting was still there. Fainter now, like it was further away. 200, 201. Adam laughed a little. Said maybe the kid was just weird. Maybe he went into the woods. We all agreed, because that was the easiest explanation. We stopped playing. One by one, they left. The counting was still there when they did. Softer, but steady. By the time the sun started dropping, the house felt too quiet. I went inside, closed the door. The counting was gone, or I stopped hearing it. I'm not sure which. That night, I tried to sleep like normal. Around 11, lights off, phone in my hand. I was close to drifting off when something hit me. I didn't remember when the counting stopped. Not gradually. There wasn't a moment where I noticed it fade. It was just gone, like something had been switched off inside my head. I sat up, tried to remember. The last number I heard. I couldn't, just that it hadn't finished. About an hour later, I heard something, soft, from outside my room. Not footsteps, more like a voice, whispering. I didn't move. Listened. 1, I held my breath. 2, it was close. 3, right outside my door. 4, my hand moved before I fully decided. Locked the door. 5, 6, I backed away, eyes fixed on the handle. 7, 8, I called for my dad. No answer. 9, 10, it didn't stop. 11, 12, I opened the door slightly. I don't know why. The hallway was empty, dark, no one there. The voice kept going, now from inside my room. 15, I turned around. Everything in me stopped for a second. The voice wasn't outside. It was near the window. 14, 15, I stepped back. The blinds shifted slightly. No wind. 16, 17, I couldn't see anyone, but it didn't need a body to be heard. 18, 19, I ran out of the room, into the hallway, banged on my dad's door, woke him up. I was talking too fast. He didn't understand at first. He grabbed a shotgun. We went back to my room. Empty. No one there. Blinds still. Windows shut. The voice was gone. Or it stopped just before we walked in. My dad checked the whole house. Nothing. He said maybe I had a bad dream. I almost agreed. Almost. The next day, I went back outside. Middle of the day. Everything looked normal. I stood near the shed. Didn't move. Just listened. Nothing. I walked to the spot where we last stood. Tried to remember where the voice had been. My body knew. My head didn't. I stood there longer than I meant to. Then I heard something. Faint. Almost not there. 198. I turned immediately. No one. 199. The voice wasn't outside. It was in my head. 200. I stayed still. Waiting. 201. I stepped back. 202. I went inside. Closed the door. Locked it. The voice didn't follow. Or I didn't hear it anymore. I don't know which is worse. I never saw Keith again. None of us did. No one knew where he came from. No one looked for him. Because no one knew what they'd be looking for. Now, whenever I hear someone counting during hide and seek, my body reacts first. I don't wait for 10. I don't wait for them to finish. I stop. I listen. I make sure one thing, that the counting stops where it's supposed to. That someone actually starts looking, not just counting, and counting, and counting, until there's a point where you're not sure anymore if you're still hiding or if something already found you